They used to give you a gold watch. Now people might give you a puzzled look to hear that you've stuck with the same job for 50 years. But when you work at a museum, institutional knowledge and the passage of time is treasured. Alan Stoker just retired after 50 years at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. Ultimately, his job was to discover, rescue, and restore songs and sounds that might have otherwise gone silent forever. A perfect profession for the child of musicians who is also a player himself. And as we'll learn today, he probably can't stay away from it for long. I'm Demetria Kaladimos. It's Banner and Company. You just retired May the 1st.
Correct.
And you chose that specific date.
Yes, I started at the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum May 1st, 1974. And so when I was thinking about, it's time for me to retire, when do I want to think about the date, I thought, well, May 1st is kind of a bookend. Why not just make it a bookend? So that's what I did. I chose May 1st. So May 1st would have been May 1st of 2025 would have been my 51st year there.
May 1st, 1974. What was going on in this town?
Well, there were certainly no bars named after stars downtown, except maybe Tootsie. But I don't know, you could call her a star. There were a lot of peep shows, pawn shops, furniture stores. You didn't want to be down there at night. It was not a good place to be. It was about 10 or 15 years later when BR 549 started at Roberts. That's kind of what started that whole scene turning into something much better, more like what it is now.
Yeah. And the hall itself was not that beautiful building down there.
No, the hall, when I started in 74, the hall was the same barn-shaped building up on Music Row that it was when it opened in 1967. I started working for the Hall of Fame before the Country Music Foundation. The offices were upstairs in the lobby. The CMA had their offices in the basement. They had not yet moved from the Hall of Fame building to their new building on Music Row, or on Music Square East, Music Circle North, I'm sorry. As a matter of fact, the week that I started, they started moving out. So after about 2 weeks, the CMF staff moved from the balcony down into the basement. They moved the collection down there, the books and the records down there, and that's kind of when that started.
Well, you are the son of country music royalty, but on both sides, I noticed and read that your mom came from a musical background as well.
Well, my mom did come from a musical background. Well, she sang around town with her sisters, the Wilkerson Trio. She had three sisters. She was the youngest of four, and so they sang around town. Matter of fact, they were singing at a church at a revival up where Earl Swinson Architects used to be, up on Elm Street, and that's where she met my dad. He was performing there with the John Daniel Quartet. He played piano for the John Daniel Quartet. My father's Gordon Stoker,
right,
most known member of the Jordanaires vocal quartet. But he came to town right out of high school, hired by John Daniel, who was on WSM and the Grand Ole Opry at that time, to come and play with them. They had a morning radio program on WSM, and then they were on the Opry every weekend. So he started doing that when he was 17, 18 years old.
Would your folks sing together?
No.
Really?
Matter of fact, I heard my mom and her sister sing around the piano. My dad would play piano and they would sing, but I never even heard and I wondered, and my brother and I have talked about this, even in church when we were doing a congregation singing, my dad wouldn't sing. Maybe he was protecting his voice.
Or maybe he was self-conscious that everyone was going to key in on Gordon Stoker.
Well, that's maybe.
Yeah.
But he wasn't self-conscious about much like that, though. He didn't really, he didn't really care. He thought, I'm just a country boy from Gleason, Tennessee, and West Tennessee and Weakley County. He didn't really think he was anybody.
Well, he sure was, and a delightful man. And, our American music would not sound the same had your dad not been on the planet.
Thank you for saying that. I feel the same way.
It must have been a foregone conclusion that you were around music, you were musical yourself, you were going to be an artist?
Well,
Player, anyway?
well, I have been around music all my life, especially around even home recordings. That's where I got my first experience with acetate discs, home recording discs. My dad had some, and I was always fascinated by them. They have a very unique smell. I love the smell of them.
How does an acetate recording disc machine work in the household setting?
Well, you would have a cutter, a machine. Most of them had a radio tuner in them, so you could record things off the radio, and they had a microphone, so you could record a party at your house, or you could record a bar mitzvah, or a kid opening his presents, and you could send the gift. You could send the disc to grandma who wasn't there for the gift opening, to hear the kid's reaction. You could do that. So there's a lot of those kind of discs all around, and people still have those. Even last year we got some in. Home recorded discs can be pretty good condition, pretty good manufactured, or even really bad, like fiber discs, which are really like cardboard with shellac painted on them. Almost like those slip sheets that you used to get in cereal boxes. I don't know if you remember those.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That you cut out of the back of the cereal box.
Cut it out of the back of the cereal box, yeah.
So what does it smell like, the good one?
Well, it just has a...
plasticky?
No, it's acetate, that's kind of the generic name. It's really cellulose nitrate. It's a petroleum kind of byproduct. So it smells a little bit like oil, but a really good sweet kind of perfume. It had been years before I had smelt that until I started working in 1980 in the archive with them. And as soon as I opened one, I said, I recognize this smell,
But it kind of started for you on the audio side with the Christmas present, right?
Yes. In the 60s, my dad had these Wallensack tape recorders in his office, and I had a lot of experience threading those and playing with them. But he bought me my first little tape recorder with a little 3-inch reel, supply and take-up reel with a microphone for Christmas one year, and that's kind of how I got started. Then in 1973, mom and dad built a new house, and they put a recording studio in the basement.
Wow.
It was a 4-track TAC, a Tascam system.
Was that just for your dad to noodle around with, or to actually release some stuff and
No, I
cut
think
some
he
stuff?
did it because I asked him to.
Oh, really?
I was playing music at that time. I had a couple of bands. I've been playing music in bands since high school. And even lately, I work with Charlie Mack, Alexander, and Mississippi Magic. I saw you at Puckett there at Fox and Lock in Leapers Fork. That's the last time I saw you, I think.
I think you were on a drum kit, right?
I play drums, yes. I also play some other instruments. But anyway, my dad built a studio in our house. And at 73, that was my first year in college. I went to George Peabody College up here, near Music Row. It was just starting to become a part of Vanderbilt at that time, but it wasn't kind of officially a Vanderbilt University. I was a music major there. I was a singer and a percussion major, and I started that. So I didn't really have a lot of time to spend in that studio. In the summer, I would spend a lot of time there, and my band rehearsed in the little studio, so I spent a lot of time up there. I guess the next thing that happened to me, if I could just continue on.
I want to hear the band names first.
Oh, well, the first band I played with in high school was Andromeda, which we came up
Very
with
70s.
From the Andromeda Strain,
Sure,
the movie,
yeah.
And that was kind of an interesting thing because that band had 3 juniors, I was a junior, and 3 seniors. It's funny how as a junior, you play a big assembly for everybody in the school, and suddenly you become cool, After that, I never had any problem being accepted by anybody. I always thought that was kind of funny,
It was your ticket.
I guess it was. Then when I was a senior, I had a group called Whale Forest. We got that name as kind of a change between Wake Forest, and we liked whales, and it was kind of, so that kind of started. And then later I was in a group called Cruise Control, and that was a very popular group. We did we opened for Ray Charles, for Mary Wilson of the Supremes, for Crystal Gale. We opened for the Tams.
Wow.
That was a pretty good band. Tony Moon, I don't know if you know Tony Moon out of Crescent Moon Talent. He booked us. And so we did a lot of gigs for him.
What was the repertoire for that?
It was mostly cover. It was cover things, but we would do some kind of odd things, some Todd Rundgren things, and some things like that. But it was mostly cover bands. We would do a lot of cover stuff, but we had a wide range of repertoire.
Okay, being the archivist and the restoration guy that you are, how much of that old material that you recorded in the basement still exists?
Well, I have two 4-track tapes still that I haven't really even had transferred. I need to get them to somebody who can do half-inch 4-track and get them transferred.
Your own stuff you haven't transferred?
I barely have it, yeah. I barely have heard it. I kind of remember what's on the tapes, but I haven't really listened to them since.
So you're working at that point. What your first Country Music Hall of Fame job couldn't have been right to tape restoration and music restoration. You had to be the mail boy or something, right?
I started out as the delivery person. It was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college, 1974. And I started out, they needed somebody to deliver brochures around to hotels and the rest stops and things like that. So that's kind of what I started out doing. The first 2 or 3 weeks, that's what I did. And after that, I got to where they trusted me to drop off the weekly deposit bag to the bank. And so they kind of trusted me from day one.
The hall itself has a long list of people that worked as tour guides, and it's sort of a who's who now of pretty famous folks.
Yeah, Kathy Mattea, she and I, we still recognize each other and say hello. Larry Stewart from Restless Heart, Tricia Yearwood was there.
Sean Camp worked there.
Yes, Sean Camp. Yes, Pat Alger, a great songwriter, worked there.
Did Pat work there?
Yeah, he worked there some. Yeah. So it's been kind of a stopping point, a place for people to work that just come to town. Kathy Mattea was great. She hasn't changed at all. Yeah. She's the same person now that she was when I met her.
Almost everyone wanted that proximity to music and music makers, right?
Yes. And to have a job where you can meet and talk to people that are interested in country music and you can tell them about country music, that's a great thing. Yeah. Great job to have.
How did you get, besides working in the basement with your own recording and stuff, did it just hit you? Did you have the bug? Were you like a gearhead that wanted the latest and greatest?
I always was kind of a gearhead about live equipment, Marshall amps and JBL speakers and things like that, because that's what you're into when you're a kid, Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of always been my focus. History also. I grew up in the shadow of Shies Hill, which used to be Compton's Hill during the Civil War. And so I could see Shies Hill right out of our front window in our house. Hank Williams Jr. came up when he was about 14 or 15 years old and did metal detecting in our yard and found belt buckles and a cannonball and bayonet tips and spoons and grape shot and mini balls and all kinds of stuff. So that kind of got my interest in history started.
So who else did you rub elbows with? I mean, there had to be all kinds of people in and out of the Stoker house.
Yeah. People that I've met at the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
At your house.
At my house? Oh, yeah. Well, we had a big, Mom and Dad had some big party for Tennessee Ernie Ford. The Jordanaires and Tennessee Ernie, they won some Grammys together, and his group was on all of those big gospel records that Tennessee Ernie Ford did. So they had a big party at their house for Tennessee Ernie and his management. Of course, my brother and I had to go to bed. They said, you go up to your room and listen to music, don't come down. I'm sure we scoped it out. But and I did get a chance to meet Elvis one time. The quartet was taking a train in 1960 from Union Station here in town to Miami, Florida, for Elvis to do the Frank Sinatra Timex special, which he did right after he got out of the Army in 1960. Dad took me down there. They were all going to take the train to Miami, so I went down there. I was 5 or 6 years old. I have vague memories of meeting Elvis, somebody on the train that was kind of charismatic and everybody was making a big deal about. I certainly remember going on the train. As a 5-year-old, that's kind of what you remember.
That was bigger than Elvis, the train itself.
To me, it was. Yeah, it was like a private Pullman car, So that was a big deal to me. So I got to meet him. And I've met other people. All the musicians that Dad worked with, Buddy Harmon, Harold Bradley, Grady Martin, Bobby Thompson, Kenny Buttrey, a lot of great musicians. Bob Moore, Dad was in business with Bob Moore. They had some business interests together. So I knew Bob most of my life.
I'm curious, did you guys clash stylistically? Was your dad saying, turn that racket down, or did he appreciate what you were bringing out?
He never did that. Matter of fact, sometimes he would open the door and say, who is that? I remember one time I was listening to a Poco record. And he said they have great harmonies. He was very interested in that. Who is that? He wanted to know more about it. So he never really, he was encouraging, but he didn't push us in any direction.
It's Banner and Company. I'm Demetria Kaladimos. We'll be right back.
Got some good news for your ears. More of that good stuff is coming up. And even better news for your hair. The best hair care is at Sephora. They've got all kinds of products for every kind of hair. From brands like Amika, Kerastase, Day, and K18. You knew where to get great audio. Now, you know where to get great hair care too. Sephora, good news for great hair. Shop hair care now at Sephora.com.
Once you got into this restoration of older sounding stuff, what is the point? Is the point to make it as clean and as pristine as the day that it was recorded? Or is there some beauty to the pops and scratches and age sounds?
Well, ideally, you do want to present it in the way it was initially recorded. Sometimes, obviously, a lot of times that's not possible. I'm not trying to repaint the Mona Lisa. I'm just trying to get a digital copy, the best copy that I can get of the condition that object is in right now. Kind of one of our main sayings is next play, last play. We want to play the item one more time and try to get the best copy of it that we can. Of course, we keep the original. We would keep the original, but we just want to try to get the best transfer that we can.
And how often is it literally next play, last play?
Well, many times you're lucky to make it through that next play. A lot of acetate discs have a lot of flaking going on. During the war years, most acetate discs are made from aluminum. During the war years, they needed that aluminum for the war effort. So all the radio discs made between 42 and 45 or 6 are glass-based. And most of them are in more than one piece. We've probably got a dozen or so, well, we had a dozen or so at the Country Music Hall of Fame in their archive, and most of those are in 3 or 4 pieces. And I would literally spend time piecing the disc together and literally taping the disc together on another platter to try to get it to play through one time. And I got pretty successful at doing it. There's some tricks you can use. I would use a stick of paraffin, candle wax, to fill in the leading edge and kind of smooth it with my finger to help it ride through. But a lot of times you do that and the disc, starts flaking off immediately. So you're just trying to get the best copy that you can. Nowadays, there are laser readers that can read it. There's a machine called Irene, Image Reconstruction Enhancement Noise. I've forgotten the acronym for it. But it's like a 3-beam laser, and it reads without touching the discs. So that's the way to do it. The Library of Congress has a couple of those.
Does that put guys like you out of business?
No, you still need somebody to actually to set it up and to do the metadata and to make sure that it's not skipping, things like that.
What was the worst condition you were ever presented with? Like, okay, Alan, do something with this. Well,
I would say one of those early fiber discs, which we just talked about, which are like cardboard.
Yeah.
First off, the signal to noise ratio is not good to start with. There's a lot of noise on them. You can barely hear what's being said. So that's, there's a lot of things like that. There was an early Hank Williams recording that he had done in Montgomery on a radio station where he was saying Alexander's Ragtime Band, and it was in pretty fractured shape. It took a long time to work with.
Who found that?
Who did find that? I think Jet Williams, his daughter. She had to prove she was his daughter much later, but she had gotten that somehow.
How often were they recording performances? I mean, was Hank a big deal at that point, so someone at the radio station thought to record it? But was it too expensive to record some stuff?
Well, it was. I don't know how expensive it was, but radio stations could do that all the time. They had the professional discs; they could do it. So yeah, it took some doing to do that. I mean, and demo studios, Acuff Rose had a little studio, and they would record stuff directly to disc. Some of the greatest things that I've done, I've held in my hand a little 6 or 7 inch disc that I realized later from looking at it, that's Hank Williams writing on it with the title and his name. How many people have held that in their hands? Wow. Not very many. And I was able to digitize those. We actually had an agreement with Polygram back in the day. They owned Hank's. That was the MGM subsidiary. we were able to release Hank Williams' rare demos first to last on a couple of albums in the 80s. I read a quote somewhere from Bob Dylan saying, "Hey, have you heard that new Hank Williams demo record? It's great." It like thrilled me to know that he had listened to that record.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all the formats you and I have seen in our lifetime, not to mention what's going to be coming next? Were you always thinking, oh, people are going to value the LP again and go out to a store and buy one? I mean, because I've got to admit, I never threw mine out, but I didn't expect anyone to want them again.
Same here. I didn't expect the companies to be releasing them again.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I knew it was going to change, and hopefully it'll keep changing, I think. It'll probably be an isolinear crystal or something that, you'll pick up your music on,
Before I get off formats, was 8-track the worst format of all time?
No. 8-track had its place. I mean, it was great especially for your car. Before you had a cassette player in your car, 8-track was a great thing. We have a lot of 8-tracks up at the Country Music Hall of Fame. They're just duplicates of other commercially released material. But an 8-track was what it was. You could carry it around. You could toss it in the floorboard, and people could stomp on it. And if they didn't break the case, it was okay.
Yeah, but there'd be tunes where they would fade out and then fade back in. Like
sure.
Led Zeppelin, you cannot listen to a Led Zeppelin tune on an 8-track unless you're really patient.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of different. Sometimes they would change the sequencing on those to make it to where when it changed tracks, it would be between the song. But a lot of times it would have to fade and then come back up.
What's in your personal collection? What's your oldest or maybe most treasured personal piece you've got?
Well, right now I'm listening to the Golden Gate Quartet. I inherited a lot of my dad's stuff. My dad loved the Golden Gate Quartet. That's the kind of music that he liked to listen to and sing. The Jordanaires used to love to do what he called spirituals, which were rhythmic. Sometimes a guy would take a solo and the other three guys would kind of do a rhythmic pulse behind them, clank-a-lank, 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 and somebody would sing on top of it. Things like that. That's what I'm listening to now. The Golden Gates were a huge group in the 40s. And Dad grew up listening to them, so he really liked that kind of music.
I'm always fascinated too about stories about the Prisonaires, which pulled their name from the celebrated Jordanaires, but these guys were convicts.
Right. Well, one of the last album projects that I worked on last year was from Misty Bragg, Johnny Bragg, who was the leader of the Prisonaires. Tapes that he had kept, demos that he had kept. And she had them in her garden shed. And when we did the Night Train exhibit in 2005, Johnny was able to come to that opening and was really thrilled that we had a segment on the Prisonaires. He passed away shortly after that, but Misty, his daughter, brought his recordings into us. And we had them in a box since '05, almost 20 years.
Are we talking reel to reel?
They were all reel to reel, yes. And we were able to work out a deal with Org Music to put out the best of them, and it came out last year. Actually, it came out in April on Record Store Day. It's called Let Me Dream On, the Johnny Bragg story. It's a fascinating story. He was in prison, and was pardoned by Frank Clement. He became good friends with Bob Clement, Frank's son. So I'm hoping that album gets nominated for a Grammy, which I think it will.
Well, push that other one aside on your shelf. Or how many? Do you have your dad's?
My dad had two, my brother has one, and I have the other, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bookends.
Yeah.
2 sets.
2, yep.
Yeah.
That'd be nice to have a 2-setter myself.
It's Banner and Company. My guest today is Alan Stoker, longtime audio preservation and restoration expert at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. We'll be right back. Did you ever have any sort of transcendental moment when you were listening to something maybe for the first time or hearing something that came out of a recording that maybe wasn't released? I don't know. Are there ghosts in their records?
Yeah, sometimes you think, am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? Because you're really monitoring in a critical environment. So you can hear people in the background saying go or stop, or you can't say that or whatever. Sometimes you hear things like that. I tell you, when we got our first digital audio computer, I remember the first time that I zoomed in on a click and drew it out with the pencil tool, and it blew my mind.
How big it was in the wave?
Well, how I could just do it easy and it was gone. Whereas before I had been declicking things on an audio tape. I would mark it with a China marker. I would, rock the tape. I would mark it. I would cut it out and piece it back together. Now I got to where I was pretty good at knowing how much I could cut out on a 15 inches per second tape, and you wouldn't really notice it. And a lot of times I would spend hours doing that. And to be able to zoom in on a waveform and draw out the click, I was like, wow, where's this been all my life? Nowadays there's software applications you could buy, RX Advanced, a CubeTech, a lot of things that could declick and decrackle and dehum, spectral repair. You can do all that stuff now digitally.
And visually also. Do you think people are listening as carefully, or are they watching that waveform first and then trusting their ear second?
It's hard. I think some of the younger engineers maybe are looking at the waveform, and I might have found myself falling into that too every now and then, but I try not to do that, obviously. One of the best things that I got to work on, I want to make sure I mention this. You probably knew Les Leverett.
Of course.
At WSM, he was a staff photographer
Incredible
there for
photographer.
many, many years, a great photographer. He showed up in 1981 in the basement of the archive with about 200 of these 16-inch discs of Hank Williams, a radio program that Hank had recorded for the Mother's Best Flower Company. Now, Les said that WSM told him that he fished them out of the dumpsters, what he said. But I imagine WSM said, just get rid of those. And Les knew that they were important and took them home. And he showed them to Bob, and Bob Pinson was he was the records acquisitions guy at the Hall of Fame, legendary acquisitions guy, and one of my mentors. I want to make sure I mentioned him. Great record guy. He talked Les into bringing those discs in, and I transferred every one of them to tape in 1981. So they were recorded in 51, and here I am 30 years later. Putting them on analog tape. And then almost 30 years later, they finally got permission to release them. So I'm thinking when they were released, it's almost as long as from when I put these on tape as from when Hank recorded them. So Time Life Music put them all out, Hank Williams, the Mother's Best Flower Shows, and there's probably, well, the box set's like an old radio. There's probably 25 CDs, and they're fabulous. And I love Hank Williams anyway. So Les is kind of responsible for saving
Les Leverett,
no kidding.
For more memories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those would have been gone if he hadn't have saved them.
I didn't want to end without asking you about the music that went to the moon.
Well, there was a DJ in Houston, a guy named Bill Bailey, believe it or not. Won't you come home, Bill Bailey? But it's not the same Bill Bailey, obviously. He was a Houston DJ. He knew a lot of the astronauts. And he did a tape for Apollo 14 that was just recordings, different country music recordings. They
just
had a little,
to pass the time up.
Yeah,
there.
they had a little cassette player and a small little 2 or 3 inch speaker. It was probably sounded terrible. So we got those tapes. And then for Apollo 16, he actually contacted Merle Haggard and the Strangers and Dolly Parton, Porter Wagner with Dolly Parton, and they actually recorded a live recording for the astronauts.
Is there spoken stuff as
yes.
well?
Oh, yeah. They're talking about. They tell some off-color jokes sometimes, and because it was not to be heard by the public. It was just for the astronauts.
Let's hear a little of that music that went to the moon, courtesy of the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Well, I know they don't allow any broads on board, but we're going to send you a hag. Here's Merle Haggard.
My name is Merle Haggard, and this is my band, The Strangers, and I hope that we will be able to do something you'll enjoy hearing on your way to the moon. And, of course, we hope that you come back, but we want you to leave this tape there, okay?
This is the biggest show of the Wagon Masters and Miss Dolly and of our entire lives. The longest distance from home of any show that we have ever played, and the smallest crowd that we have ever played for. So I hope you will enjoy the songs and each thing that we put down for you. Now here is a beautiful little lady to sing one of her big hit songs that I know you will enjoy, titled Joshua, Miss Dolly Parton.
Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah.
Well, a good ways down the railroad track, there was this little old rundown shack, and in it lived a man I'd never seen. Folks said he was a mean and a vicious man.
So we had the tapes on exhibit, the cassette tapes on exhibit for a long time. But I was able to take those cassettes and digitize them and make them sound good. They're on the digital archive now. If you go to the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum website and go to collections and click on digital archive, you can type in Apollo 16 and you can hear some of those. They're amazing.
What are going to be the treasures of the future? I guess we don't know.
No, we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the way they're distributing music now is it's all digital. You know, and you can't really buy a CD or a record like you used to be able to. Everything is digital. So we try to keep up with press releases that companies put out. And if they say they're releasing something, then we put it on a hit list and we try to acquire it later. I say we, I no longer work there, but I feel like I do.
Well, you've been gone for a month now, so what in the world have you been doing? What's on your to-do list?
Well, I've been building a little home audio workstation. I really haven't had time. Every day I've had something to do.
They can't separate you from music. You're not going to take up some brand new interest or hobby, are you?
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to continue to volunteer. I'm going to volunteer up there. They need help in the archive all the time. They've always got donations that need processing, people that they trust that know how to process stuff, and I think they still trust me. I'm sure they do.
Banner & Company is a production of the New Nashville Banner. This episode was produced by Steve Harouche and Lily Sabella. Edited and mixed by me. The original music is by Verlin Thompson. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or at NashvilleBanner.com. You're in good company. Well, you've listened to our podcast, or at least you mentioned it to me, so you probably know that the final question is in the fishbowl.
Oh, it is? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is from Andrew Leeper. What is your solution
to Nashville traffic?
Avoid it. Yeah, plan your trip non-rush hour. Fortunately, being retired, I can do that now.